Hello, Virgo. Welcome back to Virgo. I'm here today to do your reading, so let's go. Your emotional landscape is chaos right now, isn't it? Multiple energies converging on you simultaneously from different directions, each carrying its own weight, its own demands, its own promises. And you're caught in the center of this relational storm, trying to make sense of feelings that shift faster than you can name them, trying to navigate a tension that's both flattering and overwhelming. Let me share what I'm detecting in the complicated energetic ecosystem surrounding you right now. The first thing breaking through is this sensation you might be experiencing of being pulled in multiple directions at once. You could be picking up on distinct energetic signatures from different people in your orbit, each representing different possibility, different future, different version of yourself you could become depending on which direction you move. You might be sensing someone who stirs excitement but also uncertainty, someone who represents safety but possibly limitation, someone who's connected to your past in ways that complicate present decision making, and holding all these competing options simultaneously while each person has their own timeline, their own needs, their own agenda is creating overwhelm that has you cycling through emotions so rapidly you can't find stable ground. Here's what you could be observing in your actual relational reality. You might be noticing increased contact from multiple sources, messages you weren't expecting, invitations that require a response, declarations or confessions that are landing faster than you can process them. You could be picking up on someone expressing romantic interest who represents new possibility, someone seeking reconciliation who's connected to old wounds, someone proposing commitment who's asking for answer you're not sure you're ready to give. And the fact that these different relational threads are all activating simultaneously rather than in manageable sequence is making you feel like you're drowning in options while simultaneously feeling like none of them are clearly right. What's churning through the relational vortex is that you could be dealing with a tension that touches different needs within you. You might be sensing that what one person offers addresses your desire for passion but not stability. What another provides feels secure but lacks spark. What third person represents carries healing potential but also risk of repeating old patterns. And recognizing that no single option perfectly meets all your needs is forcing you to get clear about what you actually value most. You could be picking up on this situation as mirror, showing you through contrast what different relationships feel like in your body. And that clarity emerging from comparison is valuable, even though the process of gaining it is emotionally exhausting. This reflection invites you to consider whether the overwhelm you're experiencing is genuinely about external pressure from these people, or whether it's revealing your own uncertainty about what you want and what shifts when you recognize that the confusion isn't about them being unclear, but about you not yet being decisive. You might be noticing that you're experiencing guilt about having multiple options when so many people have none. You could be picking up on part of yourself that feels you should be grateful, that should easily choose from available possibilities rather than complaining about abundance. But abundance of wrong options isn't actually abundance, and having multiple people interested doesn't obligate you to any of them. You might be sensing that you're allowed to want what you want, that you don't have to settle for best available option if best available still doesn't feel aligned with what you're actually seeking, and giving yourself permission to be discerning rather than desperate is a crucial boundary you're learning to maintain. What's radiating through the competing timelines is that you could be dealing with someone who wants casual dating while you're ready for something more serious. You might be picking up on mismatch between what you need and what someone's offering, sensing their interest, but also their limitations, their desire for you, but also their inability or unwillingness to meet you at depth you require. You could be experiencing temptation to accept partial availability because it's better than nothing. And catching yourself before you compromise what you actually deserve just because you're flattered by attention is work you're doing right now to honor your own evolution beyond accepting crumbs. What's particularly complex about what I'm witnessing is that you might be approaching conversation with someone who hurt you in past. You could be sensing their desire to apologize, to make amends, to address harm they caused, and seek your forgiveness. And you're caught between wanting closure that apology might provide and protecting yourself from reopening wounds that have barely begun to heal. You might be picking up on their motivation for apologizing, whether it's genuinely about your healing or more about their guilt relief. And that distinction matters enormously in determining whether engaging with their apology serves you or just serves them at continued cost to your emotional resources. Um, you might be observing that you're experiencing one of these people as potentially serious partner. You could be picking up on someone who's expressing interest not just in dating, but in building actual future, who's using language around commitment, around marriage, around permanence that both thrills and terrifies you. You might be sensing that accepting this person's pursuit would mean closing doors to other possibilities, would require you to declare yourself ready for a level of commitment you're not certain you've reached. And that pressure to make adult decision with long-term consequences while you're still processing who you are and what you want is contributing to emotional whiplash you're experiencing. What's threading through the decision matrix is that you could be dealing with recognition that choosing one person means actively declining others. You might be sensing that this isn't theoretical anymore, that you're going to have to hurt someone, disappoint someone, close relational doors that once closed might not reopen. You could be picking up on weight of your own power in this situation, on your capacity to affect these people's experiences through choices you make. And that responsibility is heavier than you anticipated because you're not just choosing what you want, you're also determining what others won't get from you. And that rejection you'll have to deliver is activating your people-pleasing patterns that want everyone happy, even at cost of your own clarity. This reflection invites you to consider what you're protecting in yourself by staying ambiguous with all three people, and whether that ambiguity is giving you valuable time to discern or whether it's allowing you to avoid making choice that might be wrong but is necessary for moving forward out of liminal space that's becoming increasingly uncomfortable. You might be noticing that you're experiencing fear of making wrong choice. You could be picking up on anxiety that whichever person you choose, you'll look back and wonder if different option would have been better. That you'll experience regret or curiosity about roads not taken. You might be sensing paralysis induced by irreversibility, understanding that choosing means foreclosing, that commitment to one possibility means death of others, and that permanent quality of major relational decisions is making you want to delay until you have an impossible level of certainty that can never actually be achieved before choice is made. What's also surfacing is that you could be dealing with different speeds of attraction and trust developing. You might be experiencing immediate chemistry with someone who represents excitement, but instability is less than #0. 5# is greater than, while slower burning connection with different person feels safer but less thrilling, and trying to determine whether to follow spark or follow sense is classic dilemma you're navigating. You could be picking up on your own patterns, recognizing that you've historically been drawn to intensity that burns out quickly, or alternatively, that you've chosen security that bored you, and breaking whichever pattern you're tired of repeating requires you to choose differently than you have before, even when that feels counterintuitive. The vibrational signatures suggest you might be experiencing this as connected to larger questions about what you believe about love. You could be sensing that underneath practical decision about which person to pursue are philosophical questions about whether love should feel like coming home or like adventure, about whether right person challenges you to grow or accepts you exactly as you are, about whether chemistry can develop or either exists immediately or never will. You might be picking up on worldview being tested and discovering through this experience what you actually believe versus what you've absorbed from culture or past conditioning is valuable clarification, even though the process of discovering it is confusing. What's significant is that you could be approaching deadline where ambiguity becomes untenable. You might be sensing that one or more of these people are losing patience with your uncertainty, that they're going to require answer, that they're not willing to wait indefinitely while you process. You could be picking up on urgency that's partly coming from their timelines and partly from your own exhaustion with being in limbo. And that pressure, while uncomfortable, is actually serving you by forcing decision rather than allowing indefinite delay that keeps everyone stuck. This reflection invites you to consider what your hesitation is actually about. Whether you're waiting for more information or whether you're avoiding responsibility for choosing, and whether perfect clarity is prerequisite for decision or whether choosing itself creates the clarity you're seeking. Um, you might be picking up on yourself using these competing options as distraction from something else. You could be experiencing the drama of multiple interests as convenient focus that keeps you from addressing deeper issue, your career dissatisfaction, your unprocessed grief, your avoidance of solitude. You might be sensing that relational chaos is filling space you need to be sitting with more productively. And recognizing that pattern helps you see whether your uncertainty about these people is genuine or whether you're perpetuating complexity because it gives you excuse to not deal with what you'd have to face if your relational life were settled. What I'm witnessing in the probability fields is that you could be dealing with fear that none of these options are actually right one. You might be sensing that universe is showing you multiple possibilities, but that truest desire you have isn't represented in current options. That you're being asked to choose between available options when what you really want hasn't appeared yet. You could be picking up on possibility that right answer is none of the above, and giving yourself permission to decline all current offers while remaining open to future possibilities is valid choice, even if it means returning to uncertainty of being unpartnered while you continue discerning what you're actually seeking. The resonant frequencies suggest you might be experiencing one person as safer choice and feeling guilty about not choosing safety. You could be sensing someone who'd be good partner on paper, who meets practical criteria, who'd likely treat you well, who represents sensible adult decision. But you might also be picking up on lack of spark, lack of that indefinable chemistry that makes someone feel essential rather than adequate, and wrestling with whether you're being unrealistic to require both compatibility and passion, or whether settling for one without other is set up for eventual dissatisfaction, is question you're turning over repeatedly without reaching resolution. What's also coming through is that you could be dealing with someone's apology requiring you to confront whether forgiveness means reconciliation. You might be experiencing pressure to not just forgive harm that was done, but to give this person access to hurt you again. And recognizing that those are separate decisions helps you hold boundary. You could be picking up on your right to release resentment for your own peace while still maintaining distance from person who caused original wound. And practicing that nuance, forgiving without reconciling, is advanced relational skill you're developing through this situation. This reflection invites you to consider what you're actually seeking from relationships at this stage of your life, and whether any of these three people can provide that, or whether you're trying to force fits that don't exist because you think you should be coupled rather than because you've found genuine match. You might be noticing that you're experiencing yourself differently with each person. You could be picking up on becoming different version of yourself depending on whose energy you're in. More adventurous with one, more domestic with another, more healing focused with third. You might be sensing that each person calls out distinct aspects of your multifaceted personality. And while that's partly beautiful being seen in different dimensions, it's also potentially fragmenting. If you end up choosing a person who only appreciates fraction of who you are because they only draw out narrow slice of your full self. So as you navigate this whirlwind of competing interests, competing timelines, competing emotional pulls, practice coming back to your center. You might be experiencing yourself as pinball bouncing between these different people's needs and preferences. But underneath all that external chaos, there's your own knowing. There's your body's wisdom about who feels safe, who feels exciting, who feels aligned. And that internal compass is more reliable than any pro-con list you could make or any advice others could offer. Trust that you don't owe anyone a relationship just because they want one with you. You might be experiencing pressure, real or imagined, to reward people's interest with reciprocation is less than #0. 5 is greater than, but interest alone isn't enough. Wanting you isn't sufficient qualification for deserving access to you. And holding that boundary while people express disappointment or try to convince you otherwise is practice in valuing yourself appropriately. Give yourself permission to feel confused. You might be experiencing shame about not knowing what you want. But uncertainty in face of major life decision isn't character flaw. It's appropriate response to high stakes choice with imperfect information. And rushing to decision just to escape discomfort of not knowing often leads to choosing poorly because you're deciding from anxiety rather than clarity. The emotions will settle. You might be cycling through excitement, fear, guilt, hope, overwhelm so rapidly right now that you can't find stable feeling. But emotional storms pass. They always do. And when this one clears, when the intensity reduces, you're going to see these options and yourself more clearly. Trust that clarity is coming. Trust your capacity to choose well when you're ready. Trust that right choice will become obvious when you stop forcing it and allow it to emerge. From deep knowing rather than anxious analysis, you're navigating complexity with grace even when it doesn't feel graceful. These people, these options, this whirlwind, it's all information. It's showing you what you value, what you fear, what you want, what you're ready for. Let it show you. And when you're ready, when you've learned what this situation is teaching, choose from that wisdom, choose from your truth, choose what serves the person you're becoming, not the person you were when these connections first began. You'll know. And until you know, it's okay to not know. Stay in the not knowing until knowing arrives. It will.